All right, let's just talk about the Phoenix. Another subject we didn't touch on last time, but they're doing well. They're up there or thereabouts the top. Their future not absolutely cemented in the Australian League, and if they're struggling anywhere, it's really the crowds versus what they're getting over the Tasman.
Yes, well, they've been very poor for 2 or 3 years, and the crowds have dissipated. But as with the Warriors or probably some NPC and Super Rugby franchises, if you put a string of wins together, you'd expect the crowds to come back. And I mean, when the Phoenix made the finals a few years ago, they were getting almost capacity crowds in the end for those finals, and for other games they're getting 14,000-15,000. So I would think that if they keep playing well, the numbers will build up again. It's the worst stadium in the world not to have a crowd, of course, because of the yellow seats. It's like having a huge sign up saying no one here.
They keep talking about going out to Petone, so do the NPC team, others, but I can't see that, can you?
No, I think the answer is to win some games and draw big crowds at your main stadium. And what's the point of Wellingtonians paying for its main stadium and then playing all its big sports events at little rinky-dink stadiums around the area?
And they were lamenting the other day the drop-off on NPC numbers, but I see Auckland, Wellington and Otago dropped off, but Taranaki, Tasman and Hawke's Bay increased their crowds. I wonder why. It could be something to do with the results.
Yeah, I think there's two things. I think the biggest thing is the results, for sure. And I think there's also that, the goose that laid the golden egg, and you don't want to overdo it. I mean, there's an awful lot of big rugby played in those main centres if you count test matches and Super Rugby. So I think the people in the provinces, it's a treat to get to see some pretty good rugby. And then if you can go along and support your local team, which is doing well, so much the better. But I do think rugby needs to be careful that it's not killing itself by putting too much in one or two places.
Well, we'll stay on rugby and talk about the All Black Tour, which ended successfully, and a pretty good year for the All Blacks. A draw and a loss, but you can't win every game every year.
I thought it was a really good year, and also I think they've moved forward a long way in that. I mean, I'm not sure that this team was any better than last year's team, but I think they've moved forward as you look towards the World Cup, because so many players have now had a good crack at Test rugby, and except for there's only 1 or 2 positions like halfback, I think, where there isn't great backup. Coach Steve Hansen, I think he's done a terrific job this year in maintaining the standard of the All Blacks, but also getting more depth into the squad.
We talked about Hal Burke's Richie McCaw with the goals that he's surpassed this year. Another one we have to think about.
Yeah, he was quite good this year. I don't think he was the best player in the team this year, though. If we're talking about the Hellbergs is supposed to be an annual award just on the last 12 months. Of course, it's not, because there's things like, oh well, Val's won it all those times. Let's give it to someone else. But if it is just the last 12 months, I wouldn't have thought I would go with McCaw. I mean, I think he was pretty good, and he's the captain. But there were better All Blacks. I think Savia made a bigger impression this year.
And the depth in various positions, the return of Sonny Bills made a big difference. That's the inspiring thing, isn't it? We seem to have choices in most spots now.
Yeah, I think we do. As I say, I'm a bit concerned about halfback, and maybe hooker's not brilliant either. But the midfield's pretty strong. I mean, there's 5 top quality players fighting for 2 spots. So it's very heartening at the moment. Having said that, it tightens up at a World Cup. We only won the last one by 1 point, the final. So it tightens up even when you think one team's well ahead. Usually it's close, and you need that depth in the squad.
And I think that's the value of the World Cup, is that it's not a given for just a couple of teams anymore. There's probably 6 or 7, and that's not too many fewer than the Soccer World Cup, where really only 10 teams could win.
Well, yes and no, Tom. I mean, New Zealand, who are minnows at soccer, go over there and they're unbeaten in the last World Cup. So in soccer, I think there is more of a leveller. In rugby, the better teams tend to win. But you are right. I mean, Wales go along and have a win last week. So Australia and South Africa have been touring the Northern Hemisphere and not having things their own way. So there does seem to be a bit of a levelling of the playing field, perhaps behind the All Blacks at the moment.
I have to admit, I'm also backtracking a little bit on Steve Hansen. I didn't like him in the shadow of Henry. He was quite a... he was almost an unlikable person attacking, but now he seems to have found he's much more comfortable in his presentation, and seems to be doing a very good coaching job.
Oh, I think he's been fantastic. In fact, I wrote a column about him a couple of weeks ago. I may have called him Steve Chew once in the column, but anyhow, I think he's quite funny. His humour's come out. He's flowered a bit actually once he's got out from under Henry's shadow, and I think there's not the arrogance that Henry had, which is quite nice. He's happy to be forthright, but he's not ridiculous about it. He's got plenty to say, and I quite enjoy the way he goes about it, and I think the players enjoy him too.
And just listening to the post-match interviews after the Welsh game, they're all on the sort of same page. To be cliche, they had the same plan. Everyone understood that they just had to absorb the Welsh onslaught, and then they would kick on, and it's exactly how it played out.
Yeah, that was a very mature performance, wasn't it? To be behind with quarter of an hour, 20 minutes to go, and to have the confidence to know that if you stuck to your game plan, you will pull away and win this well, which is what they did. There was no panic at all.
To netball, a revamp of the ANZ Championship, got a complex conference system. Do you think this is the boost it needs?
I think it's incredibly unfair. I mean, it sort of guarantees New Zealand teams more success than they probably deserve. I think the people organising that competition are very aware that Australia are actually too good at the moment. So it's a lopsided thing, so they've skewed the rules to help New Zealand slip through. I don't think the Aussies are very happy about it.
Now, the natural progression would be to have, in a small competition, to have home and away against all teams. But I think New Zealand might fear the outcome.
Yeah, well, we would come second nearly every time. New Zealand netball is struggling at the moment. There's not a lot of depth. I mean, there's not even a lot of really good players coming through, and some of the big names have not performed that well.
Yeah, I thought that Fast Five concept addressed some of the issues, rewarded long shots, took a few people off the court, reduced the referee, the umpire's impact. But as soon as it's got momentum, it got cancelled.
Yeah, maybe if they just let them run with the ball as well, they could have a new game and call it basketball.
I think that's how it happened, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
What about, we'll touch on basketball at the moment, Adams been truly a star in the NBA?
Yes, it's nothing against Sean Marks. He went over there and forged a good career as a player, but as a bench player and a support player. But you do look at Adams and you look at the respect that people hold him in and think he has the potential over the next decade to be one of the NBA stars, which would be fabulous.
And that's a hard road to hoe, isn't it? Because there are thousands of people trying to get into that. To even break in is an achievement, to succeed even more so.
Yeah, I mean, for a start, I think he has an advantage coming from New Zealand because he's a bit different, so people look at him and notice him more than just another black kid from Arkansas or somewhere. But then once you're in there, you have to do it. Once you've got your foothold, you have to do it on the court. There's no, oh, we'll put him on the court because he's from New Zealand or anything. And he really justifies his presence. I mean, he is a terrific talent.
You mentioned Val Adams earlier. I think she's been named Athlete of the Year, World Athlete of the Year. It's hard to ignore her, isn't it? At this end, it just shows you how in high regard that she's held amongst her peers.
That's true. I mean, I notice at World Track and Field Champs and at the Olympics, I mean, she is treated like a genuine superstar. And she should be. She's unbeaten year after year. But she's definitely treated with more reverence at those events than she is in New Zealand, where people go, oh yeah, Val's good, yeah, she's won again and so on. But at those events, I mean, they line up to get her autograph. They line up for miles to get her autograph, and get a photo with her or whatever. She's a super athlete and accorded that sort of status. She was made World Athlete of the Year, World Women's Athlete of the Year this year, but they could have given her that any of the last 4 or 5 years. She's virtually unbeaten through that period.